Hello there, podcasting world. Troy to the max extreme here.
And Ghost Hunter Dave over here.
And together we tuck in as Imperius Rex.
We tuck in?
That's right.
Oh. What's that mean?
Well, recording late, I thought we'd just try to get a few Z's before we get the show in.
Oh, all right.
To be fresh.
Right. Sounds good. I did have a little nap earlier, so I am refreshed. But I've also had 3 alcoholic beverages, so now I'm getting a tad sleepy again. So let's try to wrap this in at under the 30-minute mark, Troy.
You got it.
All right. If you're new to the Imperius Rex household name, Troy and I are 2 guys that do a YouTube channel where we talk about comics over a couple of beers. And, because of the state of everything right now, that's been harder to do in person, so we thought, what better way to keep the spirit alive than to continue in podcast form as we cover something that we are dubbing Event Fatigue, where we're going to be covering the Marvel Comics event series, kicking off with Avengers Disassembled.
Yes, we've been really talking about doing this for a while.
It was more of like a threat that we were throwing around at each other. Like, if you don't read this, Troy, we're gonna read the whole goddamn event series from Marvel.
And so now we're here, we're doing it.
Yep. What else are we gonna do? Spend time with our loved ones?
Not really.
They've had enough of us. They're doing their own podcasts right now.
I would love to listen to that podcast. It would be so much heirs grieved. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I'd subscribe to it, but I don't have the time, Troy. I'm a busy man.
Same.
I've got Avengers books to read.
Oh, yeah.
If this is your first time listening, which it should be because this is the first episode, we are going to do an episode covering all of the major milestones of pretty much like the entire Bendis run of the Marvel Universe there.
Yeah.
Kicking off with Avengers Disassembled, as I said before. There's going to be a couple other writers that are going to join in, like Mark Millar, Fraction. Who are some of the other big ones there? I think that's it. Bendis doesn't give up the reins very often.
No. Yeah, it's mostly Bendis, but then it's gonna near the end there. It's gonna be a big shake 'em up with the Secret Wars, almost like beginning and ending with Secret Wars.
Ooh. Except we're not starting with Secret Wars.
Well, of course.
Right.
But enough of that shit. We're going to jump right in to where it all ended with Avengers 500 through 503, the Avengers Disassembled arc.
My word. The beginning of the end of the Avengers. The Earth's Mightiest.
That's right. So, Dave, do you know... We were kind of talking a few days ago. Do you know what happened, like, right before this?
I was hoping you would be able to answer this, because I had no idea. And I even went online and tried to find out what happened, and apparently not really anything relevant.
No.
Nothing worth noting.
So, okay, so right before this, Chuck Austin was writing it. And it was actually a different number, like... the Avengers numbering is so complicated because this is actually volume 4, Avengers 500. So volume 3 was directly before this and it ended at number 83. But somehow the issue I have in my hand is issue number 500.
My word.
And the stuff that came immediately a month before this was just an Invaders story arc where they find out that they still like Namor or something like that. I don't know.
Until further notice.
Yeah.
He's on probation.
For sure. So it's nothing worthy at all. Even if you look in Wikipedia, which I have open right now, just to see if like a little stint right before this, there is nothing between the year 1990 and 2005. There is like nothing listed in there as it being relevant whatsoever, except for Jack of Hearts, Betsy Braddock, and Mockingbird joining the team very briefly before one of them dies.
Who?
Yeah, and then others just go off on the wayside.
My word. Can you imagine a time when Avengers wasn't like a top tier name?
Right. And it wasn't. Like, so at this point in time, the Ultimate Comics have already been going for maybe almost 5 years.
Yeah. Yep. And Bendis had made his name on Ultimate Spider-Man there, reinventing the web slinger.
Yep. And by then the Ultimates would have happened and a bunch of other titles. And at this point, I think the Ultimate titles are doing better. I don't know if sales-wise, but at least better
critically received, yeah,
than the original titles. So they were like, well, we're not doing anything. Bendis, you want to come over here and shake it up? And so shake it up he did. And he started it here with this Avengers Disassembled arc.
So if somebody wants to just join in with us here, they can just pick up Avengers Disassembled with no worry about anything that came before this. Because anything that's relevant, they address it in the first couple pages, and then they just move forward. Yep. This was a reinvention of the brand.
Yes, this is definitely just scorched earth, and they're building on top of it.
A reorganization. Yes. A company reorganization.
Yes.
Lost a lot of good people, but you know what? They're on to better things. The company's leaner now. The synergy is moving forward. It's going to be better. Let's go.
At least they hope so. They put all their eggs in the Bendis basket. And in hindsight, it paid off for them. But this was definitely a bit of a gamble because this is their main line. You know, this is what they've been going at since the 60s. Mm-hmm. And they're really throwing everything at Bendis to be like, here you go. Spider-Man was good. So, do you want to write a billion things? And right off the bat, so like I've read Avengers Disassembled probably 2, maybe even 3 times through. And at the time, like I really dug it because it still has a bit of its compressed storytelling, a bit. But it is very Bendis-y wordy.
It is extremely Bendis-y wordy. I had forgotten how I haven't read a Bendis book in a while, probably a year or two. I had almost let myself forget how wordy Bendis can get. But at the same time, I never stop enjoying it, I guess.
Yeah,
like
not...
It never bothers me. It's never boring.
No, I am not ever like a huge Bendis hater. And even when I open up to a page where I'm just seeing dialogue over dialogue, it's all very conversational, and it really flows. And so you get through it really quick. And he usually gets top-tier art talent on it, too. So it's at least good to look at as well.
Yeah, and should we talk about that right now, since we've definitely shined a light on Bendis as the architect of the new Marvel Universe here that we're covering? Let's talk a little bit about the art team that he has, at least in this beginning chapter, with David Finch and Danny McKee.
Yes.
So Finch on pencils and Danny on inks. Danny is definitely a big name, and as far as inkers go in that field, he's a recognizable name that you'd see across many different imprints.
Yep.
And Finch, what did David Finch do prior to this? I saw he did a lot of Avengers covers prior to this, but I don't know if he did any interior art. Did he? Do you know?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I want to say he got started at Image, but that might not be even right. But he does have like an Image-ish style.
Yeah, kind of like that Witchblade style, you know?
But I couldn't say if that's correct or not. But here he's doing full interiors up until a point And at the time, 2005, I thought this was some awesome looking stuff.
I did too. I like when I read this, and this is a book that I believe I bought like as it came out, which I was probably right out of high school in college at this point, right on that cusp. And this might have been one that maybe I bought in trade and then went back and started picking up issues right after this big event. But I remember reading this fairly close to its inception. And this was like the high watermark of comic book art for me at that time. Yeah. You know, it was hyper detailed. It was kind of like a Jim Lee level of detail, but I would say a bit more realistic than Jim Lee. Not quite as much stylized interpretation. And at the time, it just kind of blew everything else out of the water, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely felt like, you know, kind of like that Brian Hitch, like really widescreen, high-octane, event-driven comic book action.
Yes, but still had a bit of, I don't know, cartooniness to it. The faces, going back and looking at this.
I say that's just because David Finch can't draw very good faces.
He has
a nose problem.
Yeah, I've seen his stuff recently, and he's gotten over that little nose hump. But here...
What a weird thing. Did just no one tell him that they're like tiny, tiny noses? Everyone looks like an elf.
I don't know. Looks like they got hit in the face with a shovel.
Everyone ran full speed into a brick wall prior to being drawn.
Yeah, but otherwise, I would agree with you completely. Like, this was definitely top tier high watermark, and even think in Wizard, I saw his name consistently on the top 5 artists to watch around this time as well. Yeah. I don't remember when the first time I did pick it up, but I know I did pick it up in trade, and it would have had to been once all this was, because I probably didn't even get to this till maybe 2006, but from there I just kept going on with the Bendis stuff and collected it as it was out in trades. I was never one to get single issues up until like pretty much fairly recently, so like I always waited for everything, but and what the bastards did at Marvel is with the trades, they made sure if you got all of them, all of the spines lined up to make a cool image, and so that really put a dent in my wallet once all these events started coming out.
That shattered Avengers logo.
Oh yeah.
Can you share? Do you have the complete collection of that?
I have the complete collection that makes the shattered A. But there are 2 books that I still do not have because I do not think they line up with the spines, and that's the Spider-Man version and the Fantastic Four Disassembled.
Stragglers.
But I do have the Thor, Captain America, and the Iron Man ones.
Do they provide any additional information? Do they heighten the story, or are they something we can ignore entirely in our discussion tonight?
The Thor one does aid in future stories, and they keep asking in this book where Thor is.
Where's Thor? He's like Poochie.
That's exactly it. But that book does answer those questions. The Captain America and Iron Man ones, I don't care. They're probably awful. I think even back then, when I thought pretty much everything was great, like I even put it down thinking like that was fine at best. But
okay.
The Thor one, if I could get into that right now.
Please do.
It actually deals with Thor Ragnarok, and he's having a whole thing go down in Asgard, which he doesn't even appear until events later, again, for the first time after his death.
If I can jump ahead, and if my memory serves me right, Thor does not reappear in Bendis' run until, is it Siege?
I think you're right.
Which is like the tail end, right?
Well, because they make that clone Thor in Civil War.
But that's not
And that's a
Thor.
psych out.
That's
I know.
Clore.
Yes, I know. But I can't remember if it's Siege or not, because I want to say after Civil War, like, Thor has his own title at that point. written by JMS. And
okay.
I want to say he's in the universe, but I don't know what event he shows up in. Maybe that'll be a fun thing to find out.
Let's take that journey together.
I would
when
love
we
that.
get there. Let's cross that bridge, that rainbow bridge, hand in hand when we get there.
I like what you did there.
I had no idea I was going there until I said bridge. All right.
Is there any of these that you read, or do you want to wait for their later?
No, I haven't read any of the tie-ins. Like, I was purely an Ultimate kid at this point. So
The Ultimate Kid.
The Ultimate Kid, they called me. One person called me. He's in jail now.
Is that your dad?
I don't want to talk about it. That's for another podcast. No, I was like, I grew up like you, and many of our listeners, I'm sure, on like the 90s animated Spider-Man, X-Men, and Batman series. So that was kind of like my comic book superhero blueprints. So I had a grand scheme of all those storylines, but more in a condensed version in like the animated vessel.
Yeah.
So like I knew of all these things, but I didn't really read a whole lot of these individual issues until I got into comics like pretty heavy, like right at the beginning of college with like the relaunch of the Ultimate brand or the launch of the Ultimate brand. So that was all these things where I'm like, oh yeah, I recognize this. I get this storyline because that was something from the series, and I'm sure that had something to do with the comics, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'm trying to think back what would have made me buy this. Maybe it was like the Wizard promotion, because I was reading Wizard regularly at that time too. Or maybe it was just like, you know, I'd heard Bendis was his hot property, and I enjoyed what he was doing with Ultimate Spider-Man and a couple of the tie-ins in the Ultimate Universe that he did. But I was just like, this seems like a good jumping on point, I guess. Maybe I'll do Avengers, like the meat and potatoes Avengers, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And
it seems like a good place to start, because it's just kicking off in its conclusion, I guess, and then starting fresh. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to jump into the main Marvel Universe with this. So I did.
And here we are.
Here we are.
So do you want to talk
night.
a bit about Avengers Disassembled and what went on in this book?
I suppose we should, since we've been talking around it for quite some time.
Oh, yeah.
So Avengers Disassembled is essentially the worst day in Avengers history, where it begins with the core team just hanging around Avengers Mansion, shooting the shit, talking about which evil villainess they would want to bang if they had the chance. The answer may surprise you. When suddenly they are surprised by the appearance of Jack Hart, a recently deceased Avengers member. And I'm not quite sure how recent, but I feel like probably from the last issue without doing too deep a dive. And he stumbles on the Avengers Mansion grounds as almost like a zombified carcass, and then explodes, destroying the mansion and prompting an onslaught of events that shake the Avengers to their very core.
Oh boy.
How
that
is
should be right on the back of the book.
I think it should. I'm going to contact Marvel, and the next time they're going to do some reprints, I'm going to put a little bug in their ear.
Yeah, I have no idea who Jack of Hearts is. I still don't. I've probably looked him up like 100 times every time I flip through this. Don't remember at all.
No idea.
Maybe he has energy powers. Who knows?
Who knows? He wears a British flag.
Yep. But
That's all you need to know. One of two members that wears a British flag, actually. The Avengers were very inclusive at that time.
And not even that really, because there's a splash page of everybody who's ever been an Avenger, and it's literally everybody.
Very inclusive at that time.
That being said,
essentially
they included everyone.
Everyone, yes. So that's just the first little mishap they have over these 4 issues. Further complications involve Ultron robots, a Kree invasion, a hulking out and destroying of a team member, various team member deaths, and a twist of fate where a longtime Avenger becomes an enemy worthy of the likes of the Red Skull and Baron Zemo.
Oh my goodness.
Avengers Disassembled.
Thank you. Curtain call. Very good. Yeah, right off the bat, when I remember seeing this before, just seeing that zombified Jack of Hearts, I was like, oh my god, this is shocking. This is shocking me to my core.
It's rattled me. It's rattled my cage.
And to actually see, I guess, actual death and shock value to this level, I don't think I've ever seen that in a mainstream book before. And maybe I'm just a shut-in and I've never seen it in like the big 2 properties, but I thought it was actually pretty shocking right at the beginning. They just blow up Avengers Mansion and it's like a previous Avenger who's like come back from the grave. I'm like, that's pretty dour.
It was the original ultimatum, Troy.
Oh, God.
They wiped the slate clean. They knocked off Scott Lang in like the first 5 pages. Scott Lang, right. Ant-Man. He's done. Mm-hmm. Dead, skeletonized, boned.
He got boned, all right.
Yeah, and then after that shocking event in the first handful of pages, we cut to Tony Stark at a United Nations press conference where he just bullies the Latvian ambassador. And I took a screenshot here where he calls him, and I quote, "Ya rat think." You know what a rat think is, Pally? You should. Latveria invented them. Look it up in the dictionary. You'll see your face. My God, Tony Stark is a mean drunk.
All the while, he's just sweating bullets.
Oh my. Can you imagine the smell of that Iron Man armor?
Oh my God. That's why he's nude in it all the time. Just to get some heat. Just to get some heat escape.
Needs to put a vent in there. Get some circulation.
But yeah, and then shortly thereafter, he talks to the Scarlet Witch saying, I think I'm drunk, but I had nothing to drink. And it's like, oh my God, the demon in the bottle again. What's he hiding? We don't know.
I haven't drank this morning. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
I accidentally drank all my aftershave to get this bitchin' goatee.
So here's something. This is well before the Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man.
Yep.
Did you read this in kind of that Robert Downey Jr. dialect?
I was aware of it. I didn't read it in that because I knew this came before it, so I kind of just read it as it was written. But it's hard not to.
Yeah. Yeah, like I kind of read it because when I first read this, I always kind of just pictured Iron Man as kind of like, you know, the straight man. Him, Thor, and Captain America were just like the big 3, you know.
Yep.
They're like Superman essentially. So there's not a whole lot of fun with them. There's not a ton of personality. They're just like the mainstays. But I found myself like going back and rereading some of the word balloons with kind of that Robert Downey Jr. Tone of voice in my head, and it fits. It works. I think you could totally say that, like, yeah, he's perfect for that part. But I think even going back and reading other Tony Stark works with Robert Downey Jr. in mind, he still embodies that part perfectly.
Yeah. And it gets easier as these events are going to continue, because as soon as Iron Man comes out, like in 3 years, then everybody writes him as RDJ.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Yeah.
especially Bendis. He gets exceptionally talky.
Yeah. Yep. Less of a stretch. Yeah. So after that blow up at the UN press conference, the Avengers are attacked once more as they're recuperating from the devastating loss of the mansion when Vision crashes a Quinjet right into the smoldering remains of their abode, and then steps out, apologizes because, he's a, a very gentle robot, a cordial robot, and then pops out a bunch of Ultron bowling balls from his mouth and just like withers away like a shriveled fruit.
Yep. Yeah, and then what do they got on their hands? A ton of Ultrons, their worst enemy.
Yeah, but he's not
becking
that
at their
big a
back
threat
door.
for him. They pack him away pretty quickly here.
Yes. But all the while, Jennifer Walters, the She-Hulk, she's going on a bit of a tear through all these robots and what have you, and is starting to have issues herself. And this is actually one of my favorite parts of this series, because I don't think it's ever been done before this. But she goes full-on Hulk mode and just ditches the She-Hulk persona and totally bulks up to a rampaging Hulk, which I
Yeah.
really like.
I like that too. Does she do that any other time? Like, does she actually Hulk out more than her She-Hulk iteration?
I want to say she does in later works, but I don't think before this she ever has that I can remember.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And not only does she Hulk out, she hulks out and rips Vision limb from limb
Tears him a new asshole.
for no good reason. I mean, I guess she had a good reason, like, but really she was kind of a loose cannon there. And then they have to like put her down because she's ready to like take out Captain America. She's going on a full-blown rampage.
Yep. Yeah. But put her down they do, and that's just another big loss now for the Avengers, that now their inner circle is going insane, and now the Vision, the longtime hero of the troop, is ripped in twain
Ugh.
to the shock of this soldier that is just watching this and holding his mouth trying not to puke or whatever it is.
While another soldier is like, it's okay, he's not a real person. He's an automaton.
Yes.
So
And this is all bleeding into the next issue as well, because that She-Hulk stuff goes right into 503.
yeah. Yep.
But then more Now this is where it gets very Bendis-y, and there's a lot of words, and because everyone's squabbling back and forth with each other.
Yeah. I will say, Bendis writes a mean team book. A lot of writers can't juggle all those personalities. And I will say Bendis has the detriment of all of them kind of coming off the same.
Yeah.
But he can really juggle dialogue, which I think is tough. A lot of times you get a good writer on a team book, like you get someone big on X-Men, and there's just too many personalities to write. And then people get kind of the short end of the stick there, like your Wolverine gets way too much dialogue, or Cyclops, and then your Nightcrawler and your Colossus get pushed to the back. But this, it seems like Bendis lets everyone speak. He gives everyone their voice. And even if all the voices kind of sound Bendis-y, I just see it like, it's okay, it's through the Bendis lens, but like everyone gets their moment.
Yep.
For better or
Yeah.
for worse.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Just as I said before, like it reads a lot better than it looks.
Yeah. I mean, these are books that I bought in single issue, and then I ended up selling and rebuying in trade because I wanted them all in like a big collection. So I haven't read this since I read the single issue, and at the same time, these are also available on Comixology Unlimited. So I read this particular chunk on my iPad, so I'm going panel by panel, and I'm not seeing the full, overwhelming amount of word balloons per page until I get to a panel where it's like 90% text. But my lord, is there a lot of text on this. But at the same time, it's easily digestible because it's a lot of back and forth. It's not like anyone has these long monologues. It's more conversational, as you said, which makes it a lot easier to digest.
Yep. It's not just an info dump on
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah,
it is, but not all the time.
No, not often, I would say. A lot of times, it's just kind of like chipping away at an info dump. It's like a lot of people are just like kind of finding their way to it by just kind of like one-liners and just little snarky comments.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, so the Avengers, they're in a bad way right now. They're down a handful of teammates, and wouldn't you know it, now the Kree are attacking, and they don't know what the hell is going on here.
Can they catch a break? I think not.
Well, let's see if Hawkeye can pull them out of this.
This is right before everybody's having the biggest shit fit. Nick Fury shows up with almost every other ancillary Avenger ever. And I'm looking at the spread of them right now.
Yeah.
And if Quasar shows up, you know it's bad.
Oh, my. Yeah. And if I'm seeing this correctly, he doesn't even have wrists at this point. He just has gauntlets attaching his forearms to his hands. Probably because they were crushed by Thanos in Infinity Gauntlet, which we ridiculed like 2 years ago.
There are some people in the back here that I don't even know who they are.
No.
Like they are very obscure.
Bronze Tiger in here?
I don't know.
Jocasta? Who is this person that is just like a white and red face, and the white essentially looks like an arrow sign? He's right over the left shoulder of Black Panther.
I see him. I don't know what his name is, but he's shows up later on in the book too.
Yeah, he's in this a lot. He has a lot of page real estate. And there's like Patsy Walker, Hellcat, there's Hercules, there's Black Knight.
Yep.
A lot of shit birds here.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Everyone answered that call.
And good thing that they did, because the Kree, as you said, did show up. And this is when they're like, ah, shit, not again. Not the Kree.
Not the Kree again.
So everybody who can flies up to destroy all these ships. Wonder Man's up there. Hercules is taking people out. Quasar, of course, is flying through some shit.
Yep.
And this is where another big loss happens to the Avengers as well. Mm-hmm. This is actually the shocking death of Hawkeye. The whole time, some explosive arrows must have caught fire on his back or whatever. And so he hops onto the back of a Kree soldier saying, not like this, not like this.
Not like this. This is the Boba Fett of Avengers deaths.
Shouldn't have all those trick arrows, you dumbass.
Does Hawkeye even have trick arrows? I thought that was a green arrow thing. Did his boxing glove ignite?
I don't have any idea, because they just look like arrows.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a good point.
Yeah, I don't know. When I first read this, I thought this was like, oh, wow, Hawkeye's going down. This is powerful stuff. When I reread it, I was like laughing at how fucking stupid Hawkeye is during this. It's supposed to be like such a badass moment, and I just thought it was like so dumb.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Not like this. That's not the way I want him to go. Not like this.
Not like this.
And I think his is a death, too, that it takes him a while to come back. I don't think he's back until Civil War.
I think he kind of like reemerges during House of M.
Oh,
and then
yeah,
comes
you're
back
right.
during Civil War. But it's like, I have a hard time trying to grasp how many months went on between this and House of M. Because, like, if you're just reading, if you're shotgunning them, it doesn't seem like that long. But I would say it was probably like a year and a half or 2 years, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. They had to get all the new Avengers books established first.
Yeah, yep. And then he comes back as Ronin, too, in that. Spoilers.
And this is where the Master of the Mystic Arts, Doctor Strange, comes up, and this is a bit of a info dump onto
This is an info dump, yes.
onto Wanda Maximoff and her chaos magic.
Yeah, so we get the big reveal of who's behind this entire catastrophe that has befallen the Avengers. This is none other than Avengers mainstay, the Scarlet Witch.
Mm-hmm. The speech that they actually give Doctor Strange to say about like why she's going crazy is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
I went back and specifically did read that, but it's like something that to the effect that she's born with this, and so because she can warp reality, that means she cannot have like an imagination, and she has to just live very plainly, and everything that she can imagine could be detrimental to the Earth and reality as they know it. And so every little thing could just be chipping away at her, and this finally hit like a breaking point.
Yeah,
And,
well, essentially, yeah, she was gifted her powers like all mutants, and she didn't have to train to harness it like Doctor Strange or any of the other sorcerers. It's essentially the same type of power, but she was just like, here you go, dumped on her, as a teenager, and she never had like any like, just epic training that would.
Yeah, she's just trying to make it up as she goes along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much.
But yeah, he's saying like, yeah, if she's like this now, we're kind of hosed. So we probably should find her through my magic. I've been able to find her. So let's go see if we can talk her off this ledge. And find her they do, just floating ominously above a staircase. And what has made her go mad is that she, and I think more of this is explained in later books in House of M, but she has imagined herself having a family with the Vision and with children, and just like little conversations here and there of saying like, I think it's an Oliver Copel illustrated section of this saying like,
yeah,
that never happened. And then she's like all confused and pissed off at it, and
yeah. So this was one moment of this where I felt like, did I need to read something prior to this? Because they really pull from some past event where Scarlet Witch, like magically created two children, and then they retconned them essentially.
yeah,
Was it Agatha Hargrave?
yeah,
Someone that kind of raised her as a child. She basically like negated these children, and then everyone just kind of like swept it under the rug. And I guess it was really Bendis kind of shining a light at, maybe it was like at, like a miscarriage or a woman dealing with the loss of a child and nobody really paying attention to it or making note of it. I mean, I don't want to read too much into subtext here, but that's kind of what it came off to me. Like, this is something we don't talk about in society. Yeah. She had kids and now she doesn't, or like she wanted kids and now she can't have them. It definitely felt like, wow, this is really sad, and you never see it from her point of view really until that very end piece where she's like sitting down at the table with them in her own like mental construct, when all of a sudden the Avengers come in and they're like, hey Wanda, this is all a sham, quit it. It's like, yeah. It's just like, it's so against any form of like her trying to heal or like, understand what she's going through, and they're just like, you're crazy, quit fucking with us.
Yeah. Yeah, and that it just ends up pretty much breaking her right there. And they this is where like the book is very compressed, and it's like classical comic storytelling, because from here on it like just revs up to an immediate end, because Magneto just shows up and just says, hey, give me my daughter, Xavier is right, I failed you. and then Hugh Downs away and flies off into the night. And then everyone's like, well, that's that.
That was something.
And
Worst day in Avengers history.
Put it on your calendars, folks.
Yep.
Let's get out of here.
Yeah,
And then,
so
and then
it
from
was.
there,
It was
it's
a
just
weird
the
end.
fallout.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. So Doctor Strange kind of magics her into submission, and then it ends with kind of an epilogue of her and Quicksilver, her being Wanda, and Quicksilver accepting the invitation to become Avengers back
Yep.
in the very early days of like the Stan Lee Avengers. And it's just kind of one of those like bittersweet moments where you're like, oh man, look at them, look how much
They're
youth
just
and
kids.
vigor they had. Yeah, exactly. Oh, they had no idea what Bendis was gonna do to them. But that was it. That was the end. That was the final issue of the Avengers, and it ends with a perfunctory the end there.
Yeah. There's a big fallout at the end where they even all have like their favorite Avengers moments to them, and Tony Stark saying like, hey, because of that whole flub up at the UN, like I lost billions of dollars because of stock holdings, so I have to go focus on that, so I can't finance the Avengers anymore.
Yeah, guys, I know this was a disaster. A lot of people lost their lives, but if I could talk about myself for a moment, I'm really in the red here.
But I was reading and I was surprised to see that Tony Stark still had a secret identity.
Yeah, in another odd moment, Spider-Man has his organic web shooters during this moment in Marvel continuity as well. So there's just a couple things where you're like, what the hell was going on in these books at this time? But that was another one, yeah. I thought the secret identity was very strange.
Yeah, especially since we've lived with it for like 10 years at the very least without it.
Yeah, yep.
Ever since the Iron Man movie, he hasn't had a secret identity, and so it's pretty weird.
How do we keep getting fooled by that darn Stark?
But yeah, it's just a touching little
tribute.
Yeah, a little ending here, and it does end with them looking out the disheveled Avengers mansion and like a crowd of people with candles and signs saying we love the Avengers and Avengers forever, and then it's the end. That's it. They made a real good effort to actually end and disassemble the Avengers.
That's right. Yeah, and this was 2005, as we said, so it's not that far off like our own national tragedy of 9/11, where a lot of comics and movies kind of encompass this feeling where, we have a crowd of New York onlookers with candlelight vigils talking about the loss of various people. So I that's what immediately sprung to mind for me when I saw this, and I'm sure it was probably going through a lot of the collective at that time too. But yeah, that was it. The Avengers finale, the special epilogue issue, which was technically, I guess, 504, if you want to call it something. Mm-hmm. That wrapped up like the main Avengers run until I'm assuming it was restarted later, because Bendis did eventually write a Avengers title. But before that, he launches what became one of Marvel's top-selling books, The New Avengers, hot off the heels of this, and takes it in a bold new direction.
Boy, does he.
So what do you think, Troy? What do you think of this? This is a tight 4 issues, especially for Bendis. I don't know if he's ever written something like this over 4 issues.
Yeah,
a lot happens in this.
Yeah, a lot happens. As I said, like it felt like it still had the classic kind of still compressed story a little bit. I was actually, it felt good. Like I didn't reread the whole thing, but I read probably half of it, and
as you said, you've read this many times. You've read this many times. I've read it once before, so I reread it for this. But you're an old hand at this.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't
I've
want the
subjected
listeners
myself.
to think that you just, phoned this in.
No, no, of course. I have done the event fatigue to myself, probably at least twice through,
Okay.
starting from the beginning here and going up through probably Siege twice.
My word. Well, I'm glad we
Once,
can finally do it together, hand in
yes,
hand, figuratively.
for sure. But I am a fan of Avengers Disassembled. I'm excited to see where I actually get tired during this whole run. You know
When
what I
the
mean?
fatigue really sets in
Yeah.
around
But
the 8 mile mark.
yeah. But knowing what comes ahead, I do like that he plants some seeds in this with Wanda and with House of M coming up later. Like it's a whole thing. He just builds off his previous work, which is a lot of his run, especially event wise. But it's fun to see having hindsight where he's going with it. It's kind of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like this was one of the first examples of like a long-term plan in the Marvel universe, you know? Like this kicks off with this big slam bang event, but he definitely, as you said, plants seeds for things that he's going to grow in the next like 2, 3, 5, like 10 years that he's on this title. He's
Yeah.
on Avengers forever,
Yep.
you know? And his reach is long in the Marvel universe after this.
Yep.
I also liked at the beginning of this, before we get the full reveal that Scarlet Witch is kind of the mastermind pulling the strings, she's in this, but she's always like in the shadows. Like when Tony Stark has his breakdown at the UN, he's talking to Scarlet Witch, and you never see her face. Like she's always kind of off panel or like in the foreground, completely shadowed, or just like just off to the distance with her face covered. Like she's always just lurking. And having known how this wraps up, I kind of picked that out. But upon like the first read, you'd never pick up on that she's just kind of always observing and
Right.
yeah, just kind of like watching it all play out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't know a ton about Scarlet Witch. Like I know the gist of her, but I wonder if like any Scarlet Witch fans were angry about this. Like did this piss anyone off? Like are there Scarlet Witch fans? Are there Hawkeye fans? Like all the casualties that happened in this was a big shakeup. Was anyone like upset about how he restarted the Marvel universe with Avengers Disassembled?
I would assume there would have been backlash because I think for a while there was backlash that he killed Hawkeye,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty sure it's on this unless he does it again later. I can't remember. Overall, I'm a fan, and so reading this right next to the Thor Ragnarok story of Thor Disassembled, I thought it was a good 1-2 punch. Don't ask me what happens in the other ones. I don't remember, but it's a great little like hey shakeup for the 616.
Very cool. Yeah, I agree. I thought it was probably right what they needed. 2005, Marvel wasn't doing a whole lot. They were just relying on their Ultimate Universe. And as we've talked about on our YouTube show before, the Ultimate Universe becomes so popular that they eventually just kind of like fold in all the tropes that are working into the main Marvel Universe. And a lot of those were Bendis tropes. So,
Yeah.
this
Yep.
is him just kind of like really kickstarting the main Marvel Universe to become the powerhouse that it is today.
Yep.
And yeah, it was a good 5-issue read. A lot happens. Name another 5-issue story arc where this much happens. This much of a shakeup in like a big title like this.
Yeah. Can't do it.
No, can't do it.
Can't do it.
do
What's coming up next in the event fatigue list, Dave?
Well, Troy, I'm glad you asked. I believe where we go from here would be the 5-issue miniseries Secret War, which is written again by Bendis and illustrated by who is it, Troy?
Gabrielle Diato.
Diato. Yeah, beautiful book. Mm-hmm. So that is going to be where we go from here. Essentially, the Avengers remain disassembled, and we go into a bit of a black ops operation headed by Nick Fury, where he pulls a team together, and they head into Latveria.
Those rat finks or whatever they are.
Oh, the rat finks. My word. Look in the dictionary. You'll see a picture of Latveria with that ambassador's rat finky face.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us for this fun little event that we're doing here entitled Event Fatigue. Dave, where can people find you if they want to do so?
Well, Troy, I keep it real over on Twitter under the moniker at Imperious Rex Show. And you can always find us on YouTube if you just Google or you YouTube Imperious Rex Show. Whatever you want to do. Whatever your search engine of choice.
That'll work. Yeah. You can find me at Troy to the Max on Twitter as well if you want to chat these events up with us. And if you want to write into the show, you can do so at imperiousrexshow@gmail.com.
You sure can.
Yeah, and so this will be a fun little thing. What does everyone think of these Marvel events as time has maybe not treated them so kindly? I don't know. What do you guys think? Let us know. It'd be fun to start a little chat or read your letters live to tape on the air.
That's right. If you have any thoughts, send them on, and like Troy said, we'll read them up. But until then, do some reading of your own and dig into Secret War, because we're going to be talking about it next week.
So not only can you find this show on YouTube, but you can find a downloadable link in the description, and it's going to be anywhere that podcasts are that you listen to right now. So, Dave, glad you could make it tonight, and I'm glad we're taking this journey together.
Oh, my Lord. Me too, Troy. It's been too long since we read some Avengers being disassembled in this manner.
I couldn't have said it any better myself.
No one could. Not even Bendis himself. It'd take him 5 pages of word balloons.
Well, that's going to do it. Thanks again for everyone joining again. I've been Short of the Max Extreme.
And I've been Ghost Hunter Dave.
And this has been Imperious Rex. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
And God damn it, be careful out there.
Imperious Rex. 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 Imperious Rex.